store aisles. We hunt for treasure, stacking them in piles. Hustling hard, making deals all day. Flipping finds, turning profit our way. Your Hustle Podcast guides our quest. Learning tricks to be the best. On eBay, we make our name. Reselling dreams, winning the game. Your Hustle Podcast guides our quest. Learning tricks to be the best. On eBay, we make our name. Reselling dreams, winning the game. Your Hustle Podcast.
Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 423. And this is a live episode.
Yeah. So
Hence,
normally
I
our
re-recorded the
episodes.
last part.
No. So normally our episodes drop on Wednesday. We pre-record those. We go live for short episodes on Mondays. But we have decided to go our full-length episode today. So instead of dropping a Monday mini, we're doing the full update episode today with you guys. So if you are listening right now on the podcast side, it is now Wednesday for you. You missed it. We were live on Monday. So make sure to like and subscribe. Come on over to YouTube so you don't miss the content that we drop. Sometimes it comes live. Every Monday we're live. And every once in a while we do a full-on episode. So we're excited to see everybody here. And today, what are we talking about, Orlando?
Well, there's a lot going on as far as in my own like reselling world. I got to tell you, in the eBay world, things are kind of like there's some changes, and we'll talk about that in reseller topics. But there hasn't been anything drastic, and it kind of falls in line with what we've been talking about recently. How it's kind of nice how the ship kind of moves slowly with the eBay. And I know in our last live, some people were like, "Yeah, but that's not a good thing." I would say right now, in the midst of Q4, it's a good thing. Like you do not want craziness to be happening, and so. We had a recent winter seller update, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And there've been some other changes, but for me, it's kind of weird. Like eBay is back to normal for me, at least for now. And when I say back to normal, I want to say it's back to normal of where it was before April of this year. Now, if you're new to the podcast, you're like, Rolando, what are you talking about? What happened? In April of this year, I went to an eBay ads event. At this eBay ads event, it was recommended to me to stop doing promoted listings with the dynamic ad rate. What that means is on promoted listings, you can cap the rate that eBay charges you if something sells through a promoted listing. And so I was told, hey, you're losing too much money. You should go to 5% across the board and you should be okay. So I followed that advice and it destroyed my store. It killed things. Like sales within a month just collapsed. I went down. I remember initially it was like 25%, then it went down 30%, then it went to 40%, and it almost got to 50%. It was kind of like, when we're watching the stock market or watching crypto, and you're like, is it going to dip any further? And no, it kind of bounced off that resistance in my eBay store, and it kind of stayed at that. It never got worse than that, but it's been months and months of me just trying to do everything I can, from running off and on sales to, trying to do maybe eBay offsite ads, from trying to make sure I'm listing all the time to accepting every offer, like doing everything I could to make things happen. And I don't know what's gone on. Maybe it's because it is Q4 and maybe that's why things are back to normal. But, the last few weeks I've really focused in on not sourcing and just listing my death pile, because I have a lot of stuff. I want to say on the conservative end, I probably have 500 items at the least that I could list before I ever even go outsourcing again. And so the last weekend or so, I haven't taken any time to go outsourcing just because, some family stuff came up, but I was also like, I can't do this. Like, I can't hoard items anymore. Like, I've gotten all these things for such a great deal, but they're not worth anything unless I list them.
Right. I'm going to take a moment just to interrupt you right there and say,
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, Orlando. That's well, for a couple of reasons. One, that's hard for all of us resellers because the sourcing is the fun part. But I know for you specifically, like sourcing is, it's not just the fun part for you. Like you're known
Everything.
for having some death piles. You know what I mean? Like you love sourcing. And I remember when we would record there in the studio, when we moved the studio to your house, I'd be looking at a lot of stuff and you'd be telling me, yeah, I still got to list that. I still got to list that. And there was money there, right? Like it wasn't that you were picking up bad stuff and just didn't want to list it to waste your time, but you had good, valuable stuff you didn't want to list.
And that's the thing. I remember the Saturday I committed to not going out sourcing, and I actually did get up and I started sorting through the stuff and I started listening. I'm like, wow, I have money here. Like what am I doing? And then it's kind of hard because I've kind of stayed disconnected from social media in the last couple of weeks. In case you guys don't know, I'm the main one that runs the Pure Hustle Podcast social media accounts for the most part. And there was a time at peak Pure Hustle Podcast Prime that we were posting, like I was posting like 3 posts on the feed every day, and I would go sourcing every day, like multiple times, like multiple stores. Like there was also always the Instagram stories with like 20 slides. I mean, it was crazy. And at that time, like it was worth it to me because the amount of sourcing I was doing was catching up with the kind of sales I was having, right? And so I didn't have any problem. Like it didn't matter because sales were coming through. It was crazy. I mean, that was from 2018 till about 2021 and so on. And then recently, like things have kind of calmed down, but I've been willing to go sourcing even if I don't have to. Right. That's the thing. It is, I would say there should be a show. Maybe there is already a show on people that like they just buy and buy and buy, but the resellers and like they end up not selling. They just buy.
I got an idea. We should start like a side show that releases every so often, where you know how they do like family interventions for people, and we'll call it like reseller intervention. We just show up at a reseller's house and then like force them to go through their inventory with us and show us all the stuff they haven't listed, and we'll pull up the prices of what they're selling for. We're gonna be like, look at how much money you're wasting, because honestly, like we all kind of need that, right? Like we need sometimes to get some stuff listed, and maybe not everybody. We have a lot of listeners, man. They source something, it's getting listed right away. Like they're on it, they're good, and they're probably having a lot of success because of that.
I guarantee though, and this is just from my observation of the reselling community, that my problem is a major issue amongst resellers throughout the entire community. Because I do know other resellers. I know reseller in San Diego, and I've seen many of them. They're out there like running garage sales because they're trying to get rid of inventory that they never listed. They're just kind of like, I don't want to see it anymore. I want it to be gone, right? And they want to at least recover their money. And if they got it for super cheap, to them it doesn't matter, right? They're like, hey, you know what? I paid $1. If I even sell it for $5 a garage sale, it's still profit. I'm moving that inventory.
Yeah.
And
I
so
like this. Tim Slim says, roll it like Gordon Ramsay restaurant shows. Yeah, we just show up. We can just start yelling like, why isn't this not listed? What are you doing? Throw it on the floor. You're losing money. You can't run a business like this. Yeah.
Oh man,
I'm the first one that needs
I would
to,
be too embarrassed to have that show. Like I just would be, because it is crazy the amount of stuff I mean, I have a garage that is full of stuff. The podcast room still has some stuff in it. My eBay rooms I've cleaned up. That eBay room was better, but the amount of stuff, and this is without me sourcing for 2 weeks, right? So imagine if I went out sourcing, I would have so much more. So I don't know. It's been kind of good. I will say, talking about disconnecting from social media, it's been kind of nice, kind of refreshing. Not saying that we're going to be gone forever. I mean, I do plan on getting back to the normal schedule of posting, but I remember my first reselling journey, like in the beginning, before the podcast. Like the only thing I did with like social media or anything was I just listened to Scavenger Life. Like that's it. Like, and I couldn't get enough of it because they were like us. Well, we were like them, but they have, over 400 episodes. And I remember I would just listen. That's it. I wouldn't get on Instagram. I wouldn't get on, Facebook or X or any of that. And I will remember, hey, by the way, thanks Tim the Slim for joining us. We got to mention you on the podcast, but you're in the chat. So he has to go hang out with family. Man, choosing family over us, I'm kind of hurt, but I appreciate you, Tim Slim. Hey, Rise and Grind Picker, thanks for saying hi. Anik Alexander, thanks for joining us. Who else is here in the chat? We got some others in the chat, so appreciate it. By the way, if you have any questions or any comments during our live podcast, you're welcome. Like we have a set program, but we always want to hear from people that are joining us here. So getting back to this idea of social media, I will tell you, social media for me, like in the beginning, it wasn't a big deal. It was always kind of like it was encouraging. and I was fine with it. But I will find, like, I had a little bit of this comparison kind of like thing where I'm like, wow, like I've been reselling for so long, and there's other people that have been reselling for 1 or 2 years, and they're just killing it. And I remember I'd watch these, and I'm like, what's wrong with me? What am I not doing right? And this went on for a little while. Like, what is happening? And I kept reminding myself, like, hey, I've been down that road. I've had the highs where I've had like crazy months of sales, and then I've had the lows. But it was kind of nice to kind of just step back and just resell, right? We just did the podcast and we just started reselling. And I find that I was more dedicated to reselling than if I was constantly on social media, because social media, props to the people that are doing social media, like, Commonwealth Picker and Craigslist Center, all those guys, but it does take a fair amount of time to be on social media. So I encourage people that are listening, if you're going to do social media, make sure you're doing something with it. If you're doing it with reselling, whether it's you're trying to get YouTube revenue or whether you're just trying to build a base of people that are going to buy, like, I think that's really important. If you're just doing it, and you're finding that, hey, it's affecting your reselling business, like, you just step away for a little bit, just step away. And for us, luckily, we've been doing this for so long that we have the ability to kind of step away from social media and it doesn't really affect us, right? We still have our awesome listeners that still listen to us. But in the beginning, it's what kind of was that vehicle that drew people to the podcast, right? I mean, that's, I just remember, like, at first I was like, oh man, we're gonna have 100 listeners, but it's social media that got us on eBay for business, got us to the conference. And by the way, we've mentioned before, we have outlasted eBay for business. So anyways, that's my quick update. I know that wasn't quick, that was long, but it's just been kind of nice to be in the groove of eBay and having sales kicking up again.
That's good. So I want to apologize right off the bat. I don't know if you can hear it right now, Orlando, but people might hear, since normally we record ahead of time, I'm able to do some audio editing and take out some other noises in the
The
background.
chickens?
But yeah, the chickens, I couldn't get rid of those in the lives. But we have I've got some rain happening right now, so you can hear it hitting outside pretty hard. So if you hear rain, I apologize for that. That's what that noise is.
I don't hear anything.
You're not going crazy. I remember when the chickens were in the background, we had people saying,
Yes.
like, I was looking for the bird. I thought a bird was like in my wall. I couldn't find it. So anyways,
You don't have any squirrels, do you?
no,
Better
yeah,
watch out.
yeah, gotta watch out. So speaking of which, so the you were talking about social media, and in fact, I recently had somebody mention on our Discord that I haven't been as active in there recently, and the reality is I kind of went the opposite route with social media, where I've kind of been on a social media hiatus on a lot of things. But over the last several months, with politics and all of that, my time has really been consumed with that. And I didn't realize how much it was impacting just every aspect of my life, just being involved in social media. And if you're listening to the podcast, if you're not watching right now on YouTube, if you're listening to the podcast when we drop on Wednesday, we may or may not already have known who the new president of the United States is. So interesting time for us to be talking right now. And yet we don't know yet, but you'll know when you listen to this. So
That is true. I didn't even think about that.
yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing right there. But yeah, so I haven't been as active on social media other than just consuming a ton of political stuff and just realizing that that's kind of, it can also just wear on you. And that's one of the reasons I am not very active on social media anyways in the first place, is unless you're using it productively, it can just be a huge burden on you. Like you mentioned, the comparison game, it's easy to get into. No matter what type of social media you get into reselling social media, there's a lot to learn, but you can also get sucked down some rabbit holes of comparing or getting some bad advice or getting
Just
negativity.
negativity. Yeah.
And negativity is huge. So you definitely got to be careful with that. But yeah, I mean, things have been going good for me. Still getting sales coming in. Definitely been a pickup since Q4 started. Little bit of sourcing. I wanted to try some new areas. So where I live, we have a Sam's Club, and the nearest Costco is a little over an hour away from us, or about an hour away from us, in a town called Georgetown, which is a suburb of Austin. So it's not quite into Austin. We're still outside of Austin. But my wife has just been missing Costco, and we did a lot of shopping in Costco. In fact, you and I have both done sourcing even at Costco. There's certain things you can definitely do well in at Costco. And Sam's Club is a really close alternative for a lot of things, but it's not Costco, right? Like it's the Walmart Costco is the best way of looking at it. So we were like,
it literally is though.
I mean, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I didn't say it's the Temu version. It's the Walmart version because it's actually Sam's Club, the Walmart version. But I haven't been able to source items at Sam's Club the way I have at Costco. But my wife's been really just jonesing for Costco. She's missing Costco. And so I was like, you know what, let's just get a Costco membership and maybe we'll go out like once a month. You can get those snacks and those things for the kids that you can't normally get. And we decided to go on a Saturday. We take the whole family, and I was like, you know what, let's go early and let's hit up some garage sales in Temple, in Troy, in Georgetown, and areas outside of Waco where we're at. And it was kind of cool going to some different areas. Georgetown definitely has a little bit more money than Waco does. So I did pretty good at some garage sales there. It's really, really difficult doing garage sales with kids, little kids. As they get older, like my oldest son, he actually likes going with me now. He spots the signs when we're driving around. Is that a garage sale? Is that a garage sale? But with baby, man, it's tough. A lot of times it's like, okay, leave them in the car. I'm jumping out. But then you've got that pressure of you got to go quickly. But, you know, picked up some bread and butter stuff, picked up a handful of clothing, some electronic stuff. But my big find was, and it's kind of crazy. It happens all the time to me. I mean, not all the time to this extent that I'm like the most blessed man ever, but there's times like I'll learn about something or want something and then end up finding it at a garage sale or thrift store. And like, oh my goodness, like I was just thinking like I needed this thing, and then here it is. So anyways, I was at a garage sale and the guy had some barbecue stuff, and I've kind of gotten into smoking and doing barbecue smoking and smoking meats and things like that. And obviously I wasn't in the market for picking up like smokers or anything like that. I didn't have a trailer with me. I just had my car, my family car. And so I was asking the guy, like, you know, do you have anything else like related to this stuff you're trying to get rid of? And he's like, you know what, I do have some coolers. So I started pulling out some coolers, and he pulled out two Yeti. They're like 5-gallon buckets. Like, you know how you go to Home Depot and you get 5-gallon buckets?
Yeah, but
They're like those buckets, but they're Yeti. And I had just recently watched a YouTube video because I'm going to smoke a turkey for Thanksgiving. I was watching a YouTube video of how to smoke turkey. Meat Church is the YouTube channel. We're not affiliated with him at all, but man, he's got the best stuff.
Church. Like
He's
you
got
go
the best
worship meat? Like what?
Yeah, not that bad. But so anyways, Meat Church has got some good stuff. And I was watching his video, and he mentioned, you know, when you're brining your turkey, like, and he used the Yeti 5-gallon tub thing. And I was like, well, I'll probably just use a bag in the refrigerator. But it'd be cool if I had one of those. Anyways, this guy pulls out 2 of those plus another Yeti like big tub. And he wanted a little too much for the big tub, but he had 2 of the Yeti 5-gallon ones. And these sell for used online for 100 or more than 100. They're pretty expensive coolers. And I was able to pick up both of them for $30 along with some other things that I picked up there. But then I'm like, man, this is sweet. I actually get to use this on Thanksgiving, and then I can sell it and make a ton of money. So it's just one of those things. And, you know, I got 2 of them, so I might keep one depending on how much I like it. I already have like a Yeti cooler. It's an off-brand Yeti cooler, but man, it happens like that when you're a reseller. How many times you're looking for something specific? Whether it's like you're looking for a specific movie, a specific book, you're looking for a specific item that you, not necessarily for resale, but for yourself, and then just randomly are at a thrift store and you're like, here it is. And it just goes to show that when you're active, when you're out there doing the thing, it's not that you get lucky. It's not that luck exists. It's just that opportunities come, and you're never going to get those opportunities unless you're out there, and you're out there to have the chance to get those opportunities. So yeah, it was pretty sweet fun.
And Rise and Grind Picker here says, oh, I sold a lot of Yeti hats too and such. Hey, listen, Yetis are one of those things that they're very hard to source because people now know the value. Like when I had big Yeti scores, I remember at garage sales, I paid $30 for a Yeti Cool Max. I don't know what it was, but it was like a $300-400 Yeti cooler. And the guy was like, just take it. It was an aqua. I noticed that also like the color matters, right? So there's some discontinued colors, and this was an aqua cooler. I remember paying $30 and I listed it, and I sold it within, I think, like 4 or 5 days for $400. It was crazy. And I didn't even know what Yetis were. Like, I didn't know until I did a social media story on Instagram, and people were like, do you know what you have? You have the currency of the South. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, people want these all day and they're willing to trade for it. So yeah, definitely Yeti. I didn't know Yeti hats. So like, I'm guessing anything Yeti, like people wear like the hats.
Yeah,
like,
Yeti. In fact, that's like the comedian. I think I mentioned it once before on the podcast, but I saw a comedian say,
is that a bolo?
I saw a guy wearing a hat the other day that said, I like to drink in public and I want everybody to know it. And he said, actually, it didn't say that. It just said Yeti, but it's the same thing.
What? Okay. Okay.
It's like, I like to get drunk in public.
Okay. All right. That sounds like, anyways. All right. Hey, but going back to what you're saying, like that's one thing I want people to realize when they go sourcing. Like you make money on items that you save money on in the future, right? So one of my greatest my greatest latest finds that I did not resell was a zero gravity chair that I got at an estate sale. Do you know what I mean? Those zero gravity like lawn chair,
Yep.
like beach chairs.
Uh-huh.
And I go to the beach every weekend here, and so I remember when they're like, "Oh, just take the chair," and I was like, "Oh, I don't know about this chair. Like, I'm not going to be able to sell it locally." But then once I got it, and then I saw it at Costco for like 90 to $100, and I was like, "Hey, that's the chair I have." I'm like, "This is awesome!" Like, I already made like $300 off the records that I picked up on that, and then I have this awesome chair that I personally would never have paid for. There's no way you're going to get me to spend $100 on a lawn chair, right? So, I totally get that, and I've saved all kinds of money. One of my biggest ones, and I'm sharing this, and this is all related. It's funny because this episode's kind of strayed to from our normal. But when my son was going off to college, I went online and I was looking for laser jet printers because I've always remember the early days of this podcast when I was using inkjet like for everything and I was printing on
No, you'd
paper.
pack an inkjet in your carry-on to take places so that you could print labels.
That's true story. So if you catch our old
Rollo
episode,
already existed at that point. Come on now.
I know. I honestly, I would pack an inkjet printer into my suitcase when I did retail arbitrage, and I flew. I remember I went to Colorado, Wisconsin, Illinois, like all these places with a carry-on that was just my printer. That was crazy. Anyways, I say all that because I learned the valuable lesson of how much money I was losing, and the only reason, if you remember, it's because College Picker shipped me out a laser jet printer. Right? He thought it was so imperative that I stop wasting money. He ended up shipping one and giving one for free. Well, I know how much money I've saved over the years, and so my son's going off to college, and I'm like, I guess I'll find one. So I go on OfferUp, and I ended up picking one up for $10. No, actually, no, it's $20. That resale value was like $150, right? And $20. And so now my son has it in college. And he told me, he's like, Dad, I'm so glad I have this because all my friends have to go to the library or they pay me because if they go to the library, it's like 50 cents to $1 a page. And I have it here for free and it's a laser printer. I'm like, wow, look how much money did I save just because I'm a reseller and I know what to look out for. And so in the end, that was kind of like profit, right? In the end, because I would have had to sell something to make up for that money that I would have lost. So anyways, I know we got on a trail, but realize reselling isn't just what you source, it's what you end up picking up that saves you money in the long run that you don't have to buy. So somebody mentioned here, Rise and Grind, we keep picking your picker comments here. I used to go to the post office and ship package LO with the address written down early days. Listen, I get that.
That's how I did it. That's how I did it for the first month for sure.
So if you're brand new to the podcast, a couple of things to pay attention to. Number one, buy all your labels off of eBay. And if you're a top rated seller, you've been selling for a while, you get huge discounts on eBay. On top of that, you save your time in the post office because your label's already printed. I strongly recommend a thermal printer so you're not having to cut paper and tape it. Like that seems like that was such a drudgery. Like I remember when I was selling like 20 to 30 items a day with that process. Like that was crazy. So don't neglect that.
And then we got 3 things I resold here. Mentioned picking up, saved over $150 by going to garage sales and picking up coats for the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
Buying nicer brands than you would normally buy on your own. It's like you go to the store, nice high-end brand, you're like, oh, I'll just get the cheaper one. But you never know. You go to garage sales, thrift stores. If you're patient, here's the problem. I feel like most people aren't patient, right? Like you want something, whether it's like you get into a hobby. How many people get into a hobby and they want to buy everything possible for that hobby right away? Or if they're like, hey, I want to be able to get my family, nice jackets and nice whatever. Well, it could take a year or two of sourcing at garage sales before I run into all of those. And a lot of people want stuff now. But if you're willing to wait, if you're willing to be patient and give it some time, you can build. Like you will find those things. You will find the right sizes, the right brands, at the right condition. It just takes a little bit of time. But that time is going to pass no matter what, right? Like a lot of times, like when you see something, it's like, oh, this takes 6 weeks, 6 months, a year before you see results. A lot of people, they lose interest, they lose hope, and they want the quick fix. but no matter what, a year is going to pass. So it's like if you spend a year, you can definitely get nicer quality things by being thrifty, by getting it at thrift stores, garage sales, secondhand, than you would be able to buy normally, and it's going to last you much longer if you're getting quality stuff. So yeah, reselling isn't just how much money you can make reselling, which that's a big part of it, but a lot of times it's what you can save. And the other thing too is, I can't remember when the thought shifted for me, when I was at like I think it was a thrift store, and I bought something that I was like, man, I really want this one. Like this would be perfect for me. It's the exact brand that I wanted. But it's the wrong size. Like I'm a large, this is like a 3XL. Like this isn't going to work for me. If this was my size, this would be I would be so happy to walk home with this. But then I realized, wait a minute, I can sell this on eBay, take the money that I made off of it on eBay, and buy the one off of eBay that I wish I would have found. So you can almost exchange things even. So even if you're finding things that aren't the right sizes, if it's got high resale value, you can almost just swap it for the right item just by reselling. So yeah, reselling is huge for that kind of stuff.
We probably should do a whole episode about this because I have stories about this if people want to listen to that episode. All right, hey, before we jump on, if you have not found bookkeeping software to keep everything, to know, how much your fees are on eBay and to be able to import them for your tax person, check out My Reseller Genie. I just went through the whole debacle of trying to get my taxes done, and even with the extension, I'm so grateful for My Reseller Genie because I was able to quickly get that information. It ran in the background for me, and so I was able to say, hey, this is how much I paid in shipping, how much I paid in all my other fees. Also, I was able to track my inventory. So if you haven't checked out My Reseller Genie, it is software made by resellers for resellers. Make sure to check it out in the link below. If you use our code Pure Hustle, you'll get 15% off the first month. Again, check out My Reseller Genie. Use our code Pure Hustle, and you'll get 15% off the first month. All right, any random stories, Mike?
Not a huge random story, but I wanted to follow up on a previous random story. So I had mentioned in a previous episode that my gut feeling, based off of my anecdotal experience, is that when you buy something off of eBay, you use eBay to purchase, that it triggers the algorithm in a similar way as, like, let's say listing items or running a sale. Obviously, if you run a sale or you list an item, your potential for sales go up because you now have more items for sale, you've got better prices. But we both kind of believe that there's also the algorithm aspect of it, where eBay sees that you're being active on eBay, they want to reward that. And my feeling is that also purchasing items on eBay can trigger the algorithm to help you get sales as well. Now, I think we've only had one person comment. So I opened up that question to everybody and I said, hey, like, how is everybody? Like, has anybody else experienced this before? And I've had one person, I think, that mentioned that they consistently do eBay arbitrage. They buy stuff off eBay and they haven't noticed a increase in sales from that. But again, it's hard to tell when you're only looking at anecdotal stuff. So I've had a few more times where I've purchased something off of an eBay account that my wife and I share, that's just for like purchasing things. We have a few things listed there. And it seems to be when we purchase stuff on that one, stuff we have to sell on that one end up moving faster than they would otherwise. And we haven't had any other activity. We haven't listed new things there. It seems unusual that something random sold. And so I'm still experiencing that. I've had that a couple more times in the last month. And so I wanted to open that up to our listeners again, just to say, hey, have you experienced it? I mean, it is a conspiracy, but there's really no way to verify this without getting more information, right? Without other people chiming in. So I'm just wanted to throw that out there one more time because I have experienced it. We had one listener comment on the YouTube saying, no, there's been no difference for them. But I'd like to have a couple more people chime in just so I can see, am I crazy here? Because it kind of feels like maybe I need to be doing even more eBay to eBay arbitrage just to get that algorithm triggering.
I don't know. Hey, you know what? If you feel it's working, I wouldn't stop. Who knows? We're all playing this game of no one knows. Make sure you understand this. If anybody tells you on YouTube or on a podcast that they know what the algorithm is doing, they are lying. No one knows. I don't even think eBay knows what's going on. Okay. All right. So, hey, I have good news. More good news. Remember how eBay had recently said that they're kind of working on feedback and they're trying to restore things with feedback, right? In the sense that like they felt that they were being too harsh. And so I kind of saw this in action the other day. I ended up selling, it was a camera lens, and I don't know what I did sell similar, and it was a Vivitar camera lens, but it said it works on a Nikon, and I don't know why it said that on the listing, but maybe that happens. I don't know. You might know, Mike, but it doesn't matter because I shipped it out and it didn't work. It didn't fit on their camera, and so they left me a neutral feedback. They said, "Hey, shipped on time, but lens doesn't work. Incorrect description." And I was like, "Oh man!" So they opened the return. I got it back. I refunded them. And then when after I refunded them, I went back to my feedback and my neutral was gone. And I don't believe that buyers can just change feedback without doing a revision request. So my guess is that eBay just removed it the moment I gave the free return, right?
Well,
This happened.
I was gonna say, I was gonna bring it up during our reseller topics, because that was one of the things they mentioned in their October seller update, was a change to removing negative and neutral feedback. However, the only thing that it said, because it was promoted as if it's this great big change they're doing. They said, "We've received your complaints. We've revised our policies for removing feedback." But the only change that they added in there was that this is the condition. They said, if a buyer requests a cancel of an item, but the seller does not cancel the item and they ship it, and then they get left a negative feedback, they'll remove those. So for instance, if I bought something from you, Orlando, and then I said, "Hey, never mind, I want to cancel that," and you're like, "Too bad, I've already shipped it," then they can't leave a negative feedback for you refusing the cancel.
That makes sense.
So that makes sense. That's a nice thing for them to do, but that seems obvious. But it was almost presented as if, hey, we're changing the way we're going to like remove negative feedback. But if you've had experience where it seems like they might be, but until we have some changes where, hey, we can call eBay and say, this is an unjust situation. Like we have negative feedback here and we don't deserve it. This needs to be removed. Until they kind of make a little bit more of a clear policy there, I think that one potential removing a feedback is just a very small step.
No, I agree. But I did have another situation. I shared this a while back where I had shipped out a duck decoy and it was super late because it got stuck at the FedEx. And then a week later I show up and it's still there. I'm like, what happened? They're like, oh, the label got removed. So I put a new label and I shipped it out. And they left me negative feedback because it was late and it was broken. And I remember when I initially called, and this was before I had messaged the buyer, I said, "Hey, this buyer is crazy," because the messages were sending me were crazy. And I said, "Hey, I don't really want to respond to them. Is there any way that we can, get this removed? Because I can't control the fact that it was late, that I did everything right. And if it's broken, they haven't contacted me." And they said no, and they refused to remove it. But then after I messaged them and I offered a return, when I called back the next time and I said, "Hey, I've done everything," I messaged them, I left them return, and they're like, "Well, it does say that it's lost and we can't verify that it's broken because I haven't messaged you. We'll remove the feedback." Right. So I'm guessing eBay is changing, because I will tell you, 6 months ago, that wasn't the case. Like, I mean, I I had a defect for an item that I sold right before I went on vacation, but they paid for it after my vacation hours, it got triggered, and I got a defect for late shipping. And I contacted eBay. They're like, "Nope, can't do anything about it." I'm like, "What? This is your fault. You didn't make them pay right away." They're like, "Well, unfortunately, it doesn't follow our rules." And I'm like, "This is unjust." So I don't know. I think eBay is definitely changing. And so, I encourage everyone, and I know some will disagree, but do free returns. Free returns. Now, granted, there's some things I won't do free returns. I've talked to you about, like those huge Eden like heaters that cost like $100 a ship. Like, you don't want to do free returns for those. I've done that before and I've lost all kinds of money on those. But if it's something that isn't going to cost you a lot of money, if to return it, like, just do free returns, because they will, as to my understanding now, they will provide that seller protection, because they used to offer it. If you're a top rated seller and you have free returns, if you ever had a negative feedback, unless there was something egregious where, like, you said something was this and you shipped out something completely different or something like that, generally eBay would honor it. So I encourage people to do free returns. All right, that's pretty much my random story. But we got some eBay reseller topics, right? We got to dive deep to the latest changes at eBay, or not changes. And I think we have music, but I can't hear it on my
Oh,
end.
sorry about that. First I
Oh.
said, did you want to shill our social media and Patreon and
We'll
all
do it
that?
after. We'll do it after.
All right, all right.
We just shilled up my reseller genie.
Cool,
We'll
cool,
shill
cool.
that later.
Cool, cool, cool.
Which is a
Here,
great tool, by the way.
I'm gonna do the breaking news effect, but I think my mic shuts off when I do it, so we'll just listen to it and then we'll talk about the stuff.
Okay.
That's definitely more awkward than me just talking over it.
That was so awkward. Imagine the people listening to the podcast, right?
That's all right.
They just heard the music and then they got back on the podcast.
Here we go.
right.
Breaking news. We're bringing you not election results, but something just as important, eBay news. What do we got, Orlando?
So two things that dropped in the last week. Number one, the winter seller update, and then eBay Q3 2024 earnings. So let's talk about the updates. I kind of mentioned this last episode. They're like a nothing burger. Like there wasn't anything like huge, but there's some things to pay attention to. If you guys already don't have your store like on a sale, if you're not doing promoted listings, if you don't have best offers, if you don't not doing 10 offers, when you go to your listings, eBay now has set up the sell it faster option. So if you go to your listings, it's like here's your listings 1 through whatever, and it has like shipping and it has whatever other items to put on there. One of the items that we'll have on there now is sell it faster, and so it'll recommend to you these different options. I don't know how big of a deal that is. I will tell everyone listening though, like you should have best offer on. You should be sending offers. You should be running sales. You may need to promote depending on what you sell. So it wasn't anything great. What I'd like eBay to do, and they kind of have started doing this, I would like eBay to, in time, and maybe they're working on this, to tell you, hey, sell it faster by using these keywords. Right? Or sell it faster by, they already do this. They tell you a price point, but sometimes the price point's kind of off. Let us know in the chat. Has anybody used the price points that eBay recommends and it had huge success? I do wonder, right? Because usually they're way less than you would think you would.
Well, it's not even just that it's way less. It's that it's trying to give you a price point for items that are similar, but it doesn't know exactly what's similar, right? Because you could be selling an item that's like a newer model. You could be selling a lot of 2 of them. You could be selling one that's missing the cable. You could be selling one that comes with the cable and the manual, but the other ones that have sold don't have the manual. You know what I mean? Like, so that average, that range that it gives you, that price point, I feel like there's so many other factors to take into consideration. So for me, the best thing you can do is actually look up similar comps that are the closest to yours, because otherwise it's just like a random, it's just an average, right? Like here's the average of items that if someone typed this in are going to get, but the listings are all so different.
Yeah, they yeah, 3 things that Result said. Those recommendation price points seem to be usually terrible. I agree, but I always wonder what if everything I listed, like the next 100 items, I just use their price point, would it push me in the algorithm? Would I have instant sales? I don't know. I just wonder. So that was one of the things. It wasn't that big of a deal, like I said. Then the other thing is that drafts are now available for 75 days. I don't know, what were they before? Let us know in the chat. Like I don't know. Was it that they were only available 10 days, 15 days?
I'm trying to think of why you'd want to draft for more than 75 days. Like maybe if you have an item that like you consistently sell like regularly, but you don't always have it in stock.
Yeah,
Maybe,
but then you would
you
do the
just sell
resale
similar, right? Or relist item. Because for me, like I primarily use drafts. I think most people do. They create a listing, but they're not ready to list it because they maybe need to take pictures. Maybe they need to do a little research. I've started using drafts where like while I'm sourcing and I find a comp, I'll create a draft right there of the item if I'm buying it. That way I don't have to go back and research, because I was wasting a lot of time. I was not very efficient. When you do the research out in the field, you get home and then you got to research that item to find the comps that you were originally looking at. So if I'm doing drafts like that, I'm typically listing the item right away. So I'm not sure why you would want to draft for more than 75 days. Yeah, let us know in the comments. Maybe there's reasons why that's an important update.
I would think maybe big sellers, right? They want to make sure they have drafts always happening, like every day, so they're listing every day. 75 days is a long time, though. That's over 2 months. I don't know. But there was a problem. Hopefully, this stops the problem of drafts disappearing. That's always been an issue on eBay, where you have drafts and next thing you know, like they disappeared. Other thing they talked about is more multi-user access, which I think is great. I remember when I had a helper, I really loved it that I actually had somebody that could log in without my credentials and get to work. But now that's been a thing of the past. That's been going on already for 3-4 years. But now they could do everything. Like they can promote listings, they can answer messages. I strongly encourage people, like if you do hire helpers, like train them on the multi-user access. It's really nice. I don't know. I may get back to using a helper depending if things pick up again, especially when I move. I think if I can have somebody that's always listening for me because I'm busy with other stuff, I think it would be a big help. The other thing, oh, this one, okay. You know how you talked about like things that are obvious, like thanks for letting us know. Well, eBay has let us know that when there's a seller initiated buyer, that now the buyers have to put their buying information before they accept the offer. That's just amazing, right? With that, to me, that is the last part of the eBay paid item issue. Now, how much unpaid items have you had, you think, Mike, in the last 3 months?
Maybe 2, not a ton.
Yeah, and I sell way more than you do, right? Because I'm doing this full time. Not trying to flex on you, just because I do it full time. But I don't have any. Like I don't. It's not. It hasn't been an issue. The only thing that I find highly annoying is the one where somebody sends you a counter offer and you accept it, but it doesn't sell until somebody pays for it. Like I think that one's a terrible. I want them to get rid of that. Just don't do that because it's kind of like the same thing. It's I don't
Well,
know.
now they do it set where if you send offers, you can send offers to multiple people, and whoever pays first gets it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But there's a counter offer where you accept the counter offer, but it doesn't mean anything until they pay for it.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of good. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, keeps your item live, but why even waste the time of having that buyer purchase it when they haven't even put in their buying info, right? Just put the buying info in there. All right, and then yeah, improve tracking. If you ship things and if you get buyer returns, but that's pretty much it. I mean, it wasn't huge. And I always warn people like sometimes there's something in the writing that everyone misses and it becomes a scandal like a month later on eBay, but I don't think this one's it. I just don't think there's much for eBay to discuss on this one. So did you find anything else on there?
Yeah, no, just that one I mentioned about the improved tracking. They also have some like new AI features for pictures, which I mean, it can be nice. It's nice that um like for instance, the background removal, that was a nice feature that eBay added. We were using third-party stuff for that. We still use third-party for certain items. But the AI enhanced images, some of the things that it can do isn't necessarily great because we've already run into the issue of if you take pictures and stuff and the pictures come out way better than the item is. Like think about like Instagram filters or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever.
You
Like
mean catfish items?
right, like where you make an item, like one of the things that can be bad is like you're trying to take pictures of like scratches on the side of a shoe, but like if you can't capture it well, it's tough because then the person gets the item and then it's like, well, this looked way better in the picture. So sometimes, I mean, you need to have the best pictures, but you also need to have the best pictures that accurately depict the item you're selling. And so some AI stuff for that can be a bit of a gamble and cannot necessarily be a good thing. But that was pretty much the updates that kind of stood out to me.
It's interesting though. Here's a comment here. It says I received an offer, accepted, and then it completely disappeared. Had to reach out to the buyer who didn't even realize that I had accepted. It's from 3 Things Resold. So that's what I mean. That's what I don't understand. Like I'll accept an offer and it goes into like who knows where it goes. And that's concerning to me that the buyer doesn't even know. Now, I would say generally the buyer would know, but that's kind of what it feels like. Like this transaction happened, but no one knows about it. So hopefully that kind of goes away and they just require people to just put in their buy information.
And it seems like there's also a little bit more USPS insurance coverage. So now they're saying ship with confidence, which ship covers now safeguarding items up to $5,000. So
Yeah,
that could
nice.
potentially be good for some people. They also have flexible cash advances. I don't know. I don't typically do much on credit.
Yeah, we've talked about that one.
So
Yeah.
you know, it's
I think it's good. I mean, it is nice. Like, because let's say, you want the money just to come out of your eBay sales and you're a part-time seller. Like, it's kind of nice. I think if you have a bad credit score, they don't check your credit. So that's kind of nice. So I know, I think it's a good thing. I think you just got to be wise about it. Make sure you look at the terms and conditions. But it's just kind of nice to be able to get the cash up front if you need to bankroll your store. Okay, let's go to eBay 2023 Q3 earnings. Now, the first thing you had mentioned, AI, was talked about in the 2020. Wow, 2024. Yes, 2024. They brought up the magical bulk listings again. They brought up a bunch of stuff, some UK stuff. I'm not really concerned about those. But the one thing they brought back up is a magical bulk listing. And if you guys don't know what that is you can upload a ton of pictures of the items that you've sourced and you're about to list, and the AI will actually fill in all the information for you. And it's kind of nice because the way it's set up is it's kind of like, when you sell somewhere in bulk, right? And it's all like all the categories like are on the side and you just got to like scroll down to fix things. And the same thing happens with this magical AI. So I'm hoping they'll roll this out because that would change. That would change a lot. Like I will say, I would love that. Like, imagine if you're a person that sells some of the same items, right? Let's say you just sell shoes and you have 30 pairs of shoes and you do the magical bulk listing. I would imagine you could list those shoes pretty quick.
Well, especially if it gets you like 50% of the way there, right? Like that would be key.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're still gonna have to do some of the work, but like even if you could take picture of the shoe, you take picture of the size, you take picture of the condition, and it's able to figure out, like, especially like models, right? Because like a lot of shoes will have model numbers, and you have to do the research. Like, okay, what model number is this? Oh, this is the whatever Air Walk 3s or whatever it is, and so I don't know. So you look those things up. But yeah, if they can find a way in AI to be able to get a lot of that information in for you, and then you just have to go in and just tweak it to make sure it's accurate, and make sure you're not relying solely on AI. Just like AI descriptions, like AI description will give you a decent description of the item in general, when it came out, why it's good for hobbyists, and all that stuff. But it might not necessarily give you all the information about your specific listing. And so you can go in and tweak things. So if it gets you 50% of the way there, my thing is if it can save you a couple minutes per listing, yeah, it's worth it over the long run. But you have to look at it as a tool that will help you get there, and not necessarily as a helper that's going to do your entire job for you.
Yeah, agreed. But eventually it might. Like, I can't, I think there is the potential of one day that AI will just look at your pictures, and based on your history of how you have your shipping policies, you have your return policies, that'll just do everything for you.
And at that point, thrift stores will never be profitable again for us resellers.
That day may be coming. I'm being real. Like, again, it's going to be all about having a source outside of thrift stores. I would say if you're a thrift store person, like that will put you in major danger. But if you are someone that does estates, or you go to garage sales, or you do private buys, private picks, I think you'll still be okay. But yeah, if that does happen with eBay and thrift stores, or even if a thrift store figures that out, like let's say the store shall not be named, corporately figures that out, yeah, I will say that will be the end of thrift stores, right? All right. Hey, other things here. So GMV, gross merchandise value, didn't go up very much in comparison. It was 18 billion last Q3, and this one it was 18.3 billion. So about a 1.78%.
It's like 1.6%, 1.6 something. But like yeah, I mean, if you believe the inflation is like 2.5%, which is what they're saying for the year, that means it's a loss. Like, it looks like good. Like, hey, our GMV grew, but it didn't meet up with the inflation that is the official inflation rate. And I know you haven't mentioned how much the advertising has went up yet. That's on here next. But here's the scary thing. So if their GMV went up 1.6, if their total like value, and then their advertising revenue went up 11%, then really the amount of money that they're making off of the items compared to how much they're making off of it's like essentially they sold less and made more off of advertising.
Yeah, no, well that's what happened, right? Because their GMV, they made 11% more in comparison. I'm not GMV, sorry, for advertising, which means promoted listings. They made 11% more than the year before. Last year during Q3, they made 336 million. This year they made 408 million. Right? So GMV stayed the same, but the reality is eBay really didn't make money off of it because of inflation, right? But when it comes to promoted listings, right, there's not a lot of heavy lifting. There's not, all it is they're just telling sellers, hey, pay us more to end up, advertising your stuff, and they're making more money. But again, I'm not mad about it. If this is what eBay needs to do to continue staying viable, not do crazy stuff like Poshmark was doing, not do crazy stuff like Mercari was doing, and the sales keep coming through on eBay, I'm not here to complain. At least they give an opportunity. If you want to be, you want to have that unfair advantage over others that refuse to promote, then I say why not? Why not? But it would be nice, but I don't know. Maybe it's a sign of the economy that GMV. I mean, when's the last time GMV was substantially growing? It's been years, right? I mean, years being since like 2020, right? Things were good in 2020; they were crazy, but after all that, like GMV has stayed flat the entire time. So now that doesn't mean that people aren't killing on eBay. That means you can still kill on eBay. Just realize like you're gonna have to source at a lower price point. Just realize you have to be more competitive in your listings. Make sure that you do something that helps you stand out from amongst the crowd.
That's right.
So that's pretty much for our recent topics. There's not much new happening, but we do have some bolos. Are we doing the music and talking on this one?
Oh yeah, man.
Bolo. What's your bolo? Bolo.
My bolo is the smell good candles. So yeah, my wife is a candle person. Like she loves candles. Every time we go to the store, she's wanting to buy a candle. And you can actually do really well. One of the areas I've done well with retail arbitrage has been candles. For instance, some stores will come out with seasonal candles. Some brands will come out with seasonal candles. And occasionally you can go to stores like Ross, or you can go to stores like Marshall's, or, those off the rack stores, and you can get pretty decent brand candles at some smells, some scents that are pretty valuable. So I've done really well with retail arbitrage with that. But even at garage sales, if you can pick up some Yankee candle, that's a popular one, or other, pretty much even Bath and Body Works, if it's a discontinued scent, Yankee candle discontinued scents. I mean, there's some Yankee candles that if you pick up, there's like a forest one that goes for like over $100 on eBay pretty consistently. So people a lot of times will buy candles, they get candles as gifts, they never end up using them, and then they end up selling them at garage sales. Occasionally you can find them at thrift stores, but a lot of times they're like already burnt at thrift stores. So you don't want those. You want them new. It needs to be never used candle in order to sell it. But if you can find a discontinued scent, those do really, really well. Here's the catch with candles though. So I've done a lot of retail arbitrage with candles. And when I moved, I had a whole bunch of candles that I had made a bunch of profit on because I sold a ton of them, but I didn't think about them being out in my shed over the summertime. And when I went to move, there were still like 6 of them that hadn't sold, which was probably like $100 in profit, or maybe $120 in profit once they sold, because I got them at a good price point. They were selling pretty good. And they had been out in the heat for too long and just completely melted through, like, because the way they were sitting in there, and they were ruined. So you got to make sure if you are selling candles, you need to have some kind of a climate controlled area for them to be in. You don't want them to be out in the heat. They could probably handle cold okay, but they might even crack and stuff in the cold. I'm not sure, but candles can definitely do well. Don't be afraid to look up when you go to garage sales. Look up some brands. You can do really well. Even the small sampler size ones, or the tiny ones. A lot of times people have a bunch of those. They maybe bought a big pack. They only use one of them. They're getting rid of the rest of them. So definitely check out candles.
Yeah, I've sold some vintage candles, but I gotta tell you, I don't know. I worry. Like, I remember I was like, is this gonna melt? And it arrived safely. So I don't know. I would say definitely it's good when it's winter, right? But I would not recommend sourcing if it's the middle of summer if you got to ship out. Like, I don't know. Let us know in the chat. All right, my bolo is Chuck E. Cheese, especially vintage Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know if we've talked about this on here on the podcast, but anything that's like older Chuck E. Cheese before the the anorexic Chucky, you know what I'm talking about? Like, there was a Chucky with the chubby cheeks, but then like they made the super skinny Chucky. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, right. Like anything before that guy, before the super skinny one. Maybe I should have chosen my words more carefully, but anyways, before that one, like there's money to be found. Like if you find a plush, or you find like a game, or even anything, like you find a hat, you find even the big money ones are if you find any of the animatronic stuff, like even parts, Like they go for good money. And I will say, anytime I've picked up anything vintage Chuck E. Cheese, it has not lasted long. So if you ever come across, you might go like, oh, Chuck E. Cheese, like who's gonna buy that, or who's gonna do anything with that? There are people that are collectors out there, and they really love those items. There was an item for a long time that I wanted to pick up. It was remember those games where like you couldn't have the thing touch the edge or whatever, like
Oh yeah.
like that little snake thing, and they had a Chuck E. Cheese one. I remember here for the longest time, and now I kind of regret I didn't pull the trigger. Like it wasn't priced that much. It would have been a bear to ship, but those things, vintage Chuck E. Cheese stuff. Even I would say, yeah, Showbiz Pizza is another thing. Showbiz Pizza is what it was called before that. Thanks to 3 things I resold. But like even the tokens, you can even sell if you have a good amount of tokens that are old, you can make more money than the quarters that they were worth back then. So yeah, check out anything that says Showbiz Pizza or it's older Chuck E. Cheese. There's definitely money to be found in there.
Yeah, I don't have a 401k. I just have a closet full of Chuck E. Cheese tokens.
There
It's
you
gonna
go.
pay off one of these days.
There you go. Hey, before we move on, though, if you haven't been following us on social media, we are Pure Podcast on all platforms. We are Pure Cast on Twitter. You could always give us a call, 619-738-1170. That's 619-738-1170. Or shoot us an email at puresapodcast@gmail.com. If you haven't yet and you're watching the show right now, please hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast on Wednesday, just come on over. Just hit subscribe. My goal, I would love to be at 10K by the end of this year, but we only have so much time, so we'll see what happens. And as always, thank you to all of you that leave us iTunes reviews. Always grateful, especially those of you that leave us the 5 stars and tell people why you enjoy the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, what are you looking forward to here?
Man, I don't know. Sourcing has been good, but I still have a little bit of a death pile to get through. So I feel like every time I source, my wife is like, don't we already have stuff we need to list? So I need to get rid of these death piles. So I think once I have the death piles completely off my shoulders, once the reseller intervention happens and Orlando comes busting in my door with a camera crew and starts digging through my death piles and yelling at me, and I get all that off my back, then I think sourcing will be more enjoyable. Because right now I feel like every time I source, there's that, are you actually going to list this? And so, yeah, I got to get those death piles done. What about you, Orlando?
Well, I am happy about the fact that I've at least started on my death piles. You know, it's crazy. I have so much homeschool stuff that I sourced, and that stuff is selling. Like, and it's like the middle of October, late October, early November, and maybe people, because they do homeschool year round or prepping for the next. I don't know what it is, but that stuff has been selling, and so I'm just looking forward to more. I also have a bunch of vintage posters from the 70s. I'm looking at the stuff right now. I have a bunch of inflatables. Like, I have a bunch of stuff. Okay. Cody Flips, hey, thanks for joining us. Real quick, Cody Flip says, it's wild. I watched you guys when you first started. That is pretty wild. That means that was 6 years ago. That means before I was 40, you were watching me sourcing. Like that is crazy. And then said, he said, just saw you pop up in my feed. Now Mike has a massive beard. LOL. Yeah, you didn't have that beard like when we first. I didn't have this. I had a beard, but not like this when we first started.
That's true. That's true.
So there you go. Hey, appreciate you, Cody, still hanging out. Thanks for listening in. And so I'm looking forward to just getting done with that death piles. I'm going one more week without sourcing. Actually, I'm doing some traveling this week, so I'll be unable to. But I can't wait to go back sourcing. I can't wait to find treasure again. That is what keeps me motivated. That's what keeps me going. But I'm looking forward to the Q4 sales. I feel right now that it took me like several months to get back into the groove for my sales to be back to normal. So my expectation is that they'll continue. The unfortunate thing is eBay has this thing where it'll hook you in. You're like, yay. It's kind of like, you ever played Wii, like you play those games, the Wii Sports, and everybody's like, yay. But then like when you feel, it's like, right? That's what I feel is happening, right? That what is this? Okay, hold on. Bearded Thrift Machine says, y'all's beards are on point. Hey, Bearded Thrift Machine, I'm sure yours is. That's a sweet username right there. Bearded Thrift Machine. But here's the thing. Like, I really hope that the hard work I've put in the last 2-3 months of being consistent on my listing consistent, about shipping things out on time, accepting offers, everything, that hopefully I eventually have broken out of that crazy time that I had since April, and now things will be back to normal. Because I gotta tell you, reselling is a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun to source when the sales are coming through, especially when you feel that your work is paying off, right? But when you're sourcing and listing and nothing happens, like you're kind of like, what am I doing? Like, this is weird. Like, I should be making money. So, anyways, Cody asked us, what platform do you all sell now on? We're primarily eBay. I think Cody asked that. The reason Cody asked that is because when we first started the podcast, believe it or not, I was 90% Amazon. Like I was doing all kinds of retail arbitrage, and now I've kind of shifted in what I do. But I have it. It's a lot easier life. I gotta tell you, the energy I had to be Remember this time in California, I would be driving. I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I would say at least 600 to 800 miles a day, like sourcing. It was crazy. Could I do it again? Maybe. But you know, if we ever have a situation like
money's there.
Yeah, if we have a situation like 2020 again, I'm out there, man. I am sourcing, I'm making, because that was some crazy money that we're making back in those days. So hey everyone, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate all of you in the chat. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't yet, make sure to hit that like button, and looking forward to our next episode. By the way, this is our Monday live and our Wednesday long form podcast. So stay tuned until our next Monday when we go live again. With that being said, make sure to be real,
Be relevant,
and be reselling.